But back to one of our leading stories this morning. The last 3 days, inclement weather conditions that led to road closures that put multiple road users in danger of hypothermia after being stuck for hours on routes like the N3. Various aid organizations answered the clarion call for assistance. And our founder and director of Love Cities NPC, Matt Hogarty, was on the ground and joins us now. A very good morning to you, Matt. A very long weekend for many and even longer for those who were stuck in that snow as well. Tell us about the efforts this weekend.
Thanks so much for the opportunity. And yeah, I think one of these severe snowstorms that we are quite used to here in the KZN Midlands around September, but this one was not like the others. Severe snow, obviously lots of vehicles being stacked up on the N3, not able to proceed anywhere. So the result of that is a lot of people who were stuck in their vehicles by the time we got the call as a non-profit to assist with a combined collaborative sort of rescue and emergency mission. Some of them have been up to 20 hours in vehicles, overnights in the snow blizzards. And so obviously people were hungry, people were cold, nowhere to go. And so again, the goal for us was to make sure that they were safe and that obviously the basic needs were met.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously they didn't anticipate this as well, considering also having to keep themselves warm. You're talking about running out of food and water, but also having to keep themselves warm, idling cars and running out of petrol as well.
Yeah, and so I think that was the goal for us, especially here in the Midlands, is our local government together with our aid agencies, traffic police, and various non-profits all got together and just formed a joint operations to try and mitigate some of those dire conditions. And I think that was the goal for us, was to get to people. And that was, again, the challenge, because as much as we wanted to provide relief, we wanted to make sure people were looked after, get medical care to people. It was also difficult for us as aid agencies, as non-profits, to actually get out onto the various roads. And so that took a little bit of lots of combined efforts with traffic police, with governments, and obviously with other non-profits coming together. And so we managed to set up a central sort of emergency disaster relief center here in Howick, KwaZulu-Natal. And we put out the call to people just to start donating. And I must say, we were overwhelmed with the amount of food, blankets, businesses that jumped on board, donations, and also obviously some clever thinking around how we can get all this aid out to people and start to obviously make sure that their basic needs were met. And our approach was to use motorbikes. And so we put out a call to various motorbike groups within our area. And we had motorbikes obviously armed with all sorts of medical blankets, food, up and down the N3, delivering to passengers in their cars and in their trucks. And that seemed to work. We managed to get out hundreds and hundreds of just of meals, of food, water, blankets, and again, just assisting where we could with making sure that traffic was eased.
Yeah, and as you're speaking as well, it sounds like these little acts of kindness that were shown by ordinary South Africans to other ordinary South Africans as well. How did that feel as well for you to be a part of that, that Ubuntu spirit as well?
Yeah, I think, these crisis moments actually reflect who we truly are. Now, they always say, you know who you are when you go through difficulty. And I think when we, as a nation and as communities and even as a province, go through difficult times, and KZN has been hit with, I mean, obviously it's from COVID to riots to flooding to disasters like this to snow now. We see the true nature of South Africa rise, which is one of kindness, one of concern and compassion for humanity. And that was just heartwarming to see. One call out to the rest of our areas, our region, and we just had an overwhelming response. Volunteers put up their hands, motorbike riders just risking difficult conditions to get aid out to people. People back at the emergency relief center cooking up a storm. Obviously, people were dropped off there as well. People walked in, abandoned cars and walked into, to where traffic police were, so they could be ferried back to the emergency center. So again, very heartwarming, very wonderful to see, and really a true reflection of who South Africans are. We are resilient, but also kind, generous, and very much concerned for our fellow brother and sister.
Very heartwarming indeed. And Matt, what's the situation like on the ground now? We do know that majority of those roads have been reopened, but a little earlier we were speaking to one of our reporters in KZN who was speaking to residents who are still reeling from the consequences because they're still snowed under, there's still the inclement weather conditions, and they're still kind of having to do cleanup of the devastation that was left.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we've seen obviously is, beyond the traffic and the N3 that was blocked up and the risks there, is that on farms, in households, trees have come down. Obviously, roofs have caved in because of the weight of snow and the amount of snow. We haven't seen snow this thick in a long time. And so those operations are still ongoing. There is still the disaster relief center is still in operation. And so any calls for help are attended to. And this is a combination of local governments jumping in, obviously traffic control. We've seen business rise to the challenge, and even just fellow neighbors. I was just hearing stories of people taking chainsaws out, cutting trees down so that roads could be cleared, and obviously business could continue as usual. So there is still a lot of cleanup happening. There's a lot of areas that are being, I think at this point still snowed in. So if there are calls, there are plans in place to get emergency aid to people. But I think it's starting to clear. As I look outside right now, the sun is starting to appear, which is always a good sign. And so I think within the next 24 hours to 48 hours, we should be back to normal, and hopefully just learning a few things from this experience, as we've done here in the KwaZulu-Natal Midlands, is realizing that actually we need to be prepared as much as possible for the effects of climate change. I mean, it's beyond flooding and now snow. There are a number of other things that we're looking at just to make sure that as communities we are prepared for future disasters.
Matt, thank you so much for your time and your efforts this weekend in helping those who needed that assistance as well.